something that I learned something new today. This was completely useful, and I have valuable points that I can apply moving forward. I will share insights from many angles. I'm gonna start sharing my presentation, but at the end, the goal is for this is for you, and my goal is like, okay, I learned something new. I learned at least one thing that I think is practical, is useful. What I am about to cover is the compilation of many years of my career from different angles, and I like that you highlighted my background as a professor guy, because I think that's important. Is like I come from that. First of all, I come from Colombia. That's the accent that you're gonna hear, and I appreciate your patience until your ear get used to it. And I was a professor for many years at the Escuela Colombiana de Ingeniería. I was teaching on the engineer school. And then after teaching the same class for the fourth time, I was teaching about semiconductor wafers and the whole process to actually produce a semiconductor wafer. And I am looking at my own notes during the class, and it's like, we don't even produce that in Colombia. Like, I really need to complement my view and get out of here. And I ended up being a yield engineer for Texas Instruments, actually producing the semiconductor wafers. And that was the beginning of my career with big data and data science and analytics and business intelligence. And that was when my goal was to maximize that yield, that at the end was a combination of multiple of these data sources across a super messy ecosystem. And that was the aha moment for me in my career. I think it gave me the aha moment as how powerful data is and how powerful a good insight can become when you are targeting a business use case and you are actually generating value into it. So I started my consulting career about 10 years ago, and I have been in the state-of-the-art technology for many years now, and that has shaped my career into where I am today. Today, I am the field chief data officer for America's Data IQ. But I will say most importantly is like I feel that I am an empowered human that is capable of understanding what to do with technology, but at the same time, very aware of potential negative outcomes or positive outcomes, or how important it is to actually have that human in the loop when we are trying to maximize what we can do with data, generally speaking. So, well, we are going to talk about what we can do with data, and we're going to focus on AI and machine learning. But as we mentioned at the beginning, mostly is like how we're going to smooth out this process and break all those digitalization barriers. And when we think about what has been going on in the last 30, 50 years or so, that we continue to digitalize our processes. So what that means is that we keep collecting data coming from all over in all kinds of shapes. So we have structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, yet another process that was not digital that now is digital, and so on and so on and so on. So this is just kind of the beginning of that journey of collecting all of this information that is gonna end up being the big umbrella that we bring to the table into what AI is, and how we, as the humans empowered by the technology, can maximize the opportunity that this brings to our table. So, parentheses, if you are wondering if I created these slides with generative AI, the answer is of course. Close parentheses. And I was also very intentional about female Latin representing AI. I wanted to force generative AI to show me that, and that was a good exercise as well. So back to thinking about generative AI, no, AI in general, and what we can do with it and how we're going to empower our own humans. I think is very important to put things into context. So a little bit of history. This is new. Is not new at all. We have been talking about this for centuries. In fact, we can talk about the 1700s, the 1800s with the foundation of math, statistics, and a lot of the stuff that we are using today as part of these algorithms. We have been working as humans trying to reproduce what we do, right? How do we play chess? How do we talk to each other? What kind of natural language interfaces are we going to have, like an Alexa, like a Try? We have been trying to see how do we reproduce the way that we vacuum, what needs to happen with the sensors, what is involved within this history. And we have been evolving. It's been a trajectory where we have newer players that are actually the foundation to everything that is today more like deep learning, computer science, and so on. But I will say we cannot talk about AI and machine learning without highlighting the fact that not everything is outstanding and positive and everything is great when we have seen this kind of news coming that highlight also the potential of positive and negative. Like, what if the output of this algorithm is something that is kind of biting us back as humans? And for that, I'm going to highlight the fact that achieving common sense with AI is hard, right? This is not a simple thing. And I like this example, and I'm going to show you a video here on the left where the goal of these little boats, and this was the objective function, was go ahead and make as many points as you can make. And the condition there was you are going to make points when you hit your green targets. And what you see going on here is that the boat is going bananas, hitting the green target, but everything in between, the port, the other boats, people, like, it doesn't matter what is in between as long as they are maximizing that objective function, which was getting as many points as possible by hitting the green targets. So if we think about what is going on here, it gives you a little bit of the sense of that common sense that we as humans bring to the table, and that is so important for us as humans to bring to the table. So if we think about what happens for us, and when I say us, as this, for example, very diverse group of people here, to try to really apply all of these techniques and maximize what you can do with your data, and think about enterprise business problems and how we are going to work together as these super diverse teams that we are, we actually go through a process where we are going to involve a lot of bi-directional communication, a lot of different personas involved on it. And at the end, it's going to be like a step-by-step wondering, first of all, what is it that we are trying to solve? Like, what is that business problem that we are targeting, where we are going to collect this data, process this data, understand this data to try to find that answer? But if we think about that process itself, it's pretty complex, and it has a lot of friction, and it has a lot of potential bottlenecks and frustration and so on. And that mostly comes from the process itself, right? Like, you think about one business problem, you think about that KPI, and then that KPI will have some variables as part of it, some numerator and denominator, and those variables are going to come from a different silo of data that is part of a super diverse infrastructure that gets more complex as we continue to digitalize our processes and collect more and more and more data as part of it. So you can imagine a process like this, where you are trying to deliver a solution that involves a data outcome, right? That solution can be a machine learning prediction. It can be a descriptive dashboard that is the compilation of a lot of data sources and information. But behind the scenes, what you see here is all those steps that are part of that flow. And not only the steps that are part of the flow, but think about the personas that are involved in each of these steps and the technology that is behind the scenes of all of these steps for this to be as successful as it can be. And then we realize that, oh my gosh, this is hard. And it has a lot of friction, and it has a lot of potential bottlenecks and frustration, because usually when we try to maximize what we can do with data, we come from a very narrow perspective. Like, I am the data scientist and I'm going to do a predictive model here, and I don't care what happens outside my box. And if the model is drifting, it's somebody else's problem. Or if somebody else needs to ask a different question, it's somebody else's problem. And when we are not thinking holistically how we can be part of the same framework together to really optimize what we can do with this data and with this technology, is where we think about all these friction points that are critical for us to really maximize the opportunity that this technology brings to the table. So I invite you to think, everybody here wears a different hat, and you have different positions, you have different roles, different backgrounds, different responsibilities, but we are all the humans that are empowered today with this technology, because what we are capable of doing today with enterprise data is actually a chapter in humanity. I see this that is really moving the way that we are working in the field. And I see it as another industrial revolution, as another, we had internet, then we had cloud, and now we have generative AI that is actually accelerating a lot of this into the field. And yet we need to be able to think as part of the same framework and really maximize the opportunities. But we face the same common pains and the same common pains over and over again. And these are very common across teams, across industries. Doesn't really matter. Everybody is dealing still, as after so many years that we have been telling people, oh, we have data quality issues. We need to democratize data. We need to get better. We need to be able to maximize what we can do with this. And we are struggling with the super classic common points that I'm still not able to have access to what I have to have access to, or I am still frustrated with the last mile process because I can't ask the question that I need to ask based on my domain expertise, or we have a super diverse infrastructure that keeps changing, because if one thing is going to continue to change is that hardware that is supporting all of this software and all of these processes that we are doing on top. I invite you to think about the first USB memory that you had, like how much money you paid for that first USB stick. I'm thinking about mine. It was a stick like that. And what was the capacity, and how much you paid for the last one, and what was the capacity. And hopefully you are imagining this exponential curve with me, right? Where the y-axis is that compute and that power that you get from the hardware as technology goes better. But again, you have very complex infrastructures, because as enterprise keep evolving, they just keep adding another piece to the tech stack, another piece to the tech stack. And what happens? Those pieces don't tech communicate with each other, right? So we keep isolating these data silos, information, and so on, and it's harder to holistically maximize the opportunity of what we can do with this data. And that adds a lot of lack of visibility and control. And of course, that is going to add a delay into the value that you can potentially generate with this. So how do we smooth out this process? How do we think about a framework that is going to allow us, first of all, to go back and forth, because we need to be able to collaborate. We need to be able to ask the questions that we need to ask from our domain expertise, from our SMEs backgrounds and experiences. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we are empowered by the technology. But I will say not only empowered, but also equally empowered by the technology, regardless of your skill sets regarding the technology, right? So what that means is that a lot of these AI and machine learning applications are very focus on a group of people that has a very specific set of skills, Python programmers or R programmers or developers or things like that. But I will say that right now, especially after the release of the ChatGPTs of the world of almost 2 years ago, when everybody else is empowered with this technology outside the enterprise, that itself generates that kind of demand for it. Like, oh no, I already know what's possible out there. I want it in my enterprise environment. How we're going to equally empower everybody to be able to tech communicate with these components that we are building as part of these flows and as part of these processes, but also empower us as the humans we are, so we can collaborate towards this same goal and ensure that we really maximize the opportunity now that we have the technology available for us. So I started with what can go wrong and how hard it is to achieve a final goal and how AI lacks of common sense. Well, I cannot just focus on that without highlighting the positive side of it, right? What happens when we are able to talk to each other, to break those silos, to tech communicate, to share, to think holistically about that problem, and to actually be part of that same framework. So I wanted to share this example with you because I love this use case. It's a very great example of what happens when AI systems get it right. And what's going on here behind the scenes is, yes, we're cleaning the ocean. But if you think about the groups of people that are behind this project, and I'm going to highlight a couple, right? So first of all, you have third parties that are working together with very, very different backgrounds and with very different set of skills. So in one hand, you have the drones that are flying over the ocean and that are identifying these plastic pieces. And then in the other hand, you are actually moving a mechanical arm that is going to one place or to other based on the data that is coming out from those pictures that the drones are taking. So you have a group of people that is taking those pictures and processing that data. Then you have another group of people that comes from the renewable energy background and expertise that is moving this arm when transforming power, like the wave mechanical aspect of it, into the actual movement of the arm, and the wind turbines that are part of the arm, plus the solar panels that are part of the arm. So you have yet another group of people with another set of skills that is part of this equation. And then you have that movement that is actually being controlled by the results of that AI that is maximizing the amount of plastic that you are cleaning when you are moving. And all of that is coming from processing this data. But behind the scenes, you have a lot of people collaborating, being able to tech communicate, being able to talk to each other, being able to maximize the insights into what the data is providing and telling them for a phenomenal outcome, in this case, cleaning the ocean, no? Now, if we think about AI and what kind of applications do we have, it's all over. It's all over the place, right? When you are watching a movie in Netflix and the system is recommending you what to watch next, when you are buying something in Amazon, and again, Amazon is giving you, hey, by the way, whoever bought that also is buying A, B, and Z. When you are tagging people in your social media, in Instagram, in Facebook, and whatever else you have, and the software is actually recognizing your friends because of this facial recognition. And when you are going to different events and is highlighting where you are and what you can do around you, and so on and so on and so on. I mean, we are surrounded by use cases where AI is part of it. So, of course, I will say this is the moment where we need to think about the consequences of what is coming next. And I say part of what is coming next, it has to be evolving with the new technique that I call the new kid on the block. So what's the new kid on the block? Of course, the ChatGPTs of the world. If we think about other LLMs, so large language models, right? And how this is part of this equation, and how not only is part of this equation, but it's also an accelerator, as in what kind of results and outcomes we can generate. And I will say it's also breaking a barrier that we had before, that is working with unstructured data. So I will say that lots of the initial use cases that we had in the industry when we were proving the value of AI and machine learning were very predictive. And the classic predictive use cases where majority of the sources are structured. That's kind of the initial stage of the industry. And now we are maximizing the opportunity of what unstructured data brings to the table with this newer technology that has been available for the masses. So when I say newer, it's like, well, it's not new. The difference is that OpenAI actually released it for everybody and made it public. But we had many other players that have been training other large language models in the last few years or so that are now releasing those services as well. So we have open source LLMs versus private LLMs and so on. But just to highlight the fact, this is another piece of the equation that, again, we need to think about it holistically, as in, okay, how are we going to collaborate towards the same framework? How are we going to talk to each other about it? And how we're going to scale on these kind of use cases that now are empowering our SMEs and our domain experts with such a phenomenal technology that is actually pivotal in the history of humanity out there. The use cases that I'm seeing out there are outstanding. So if we think about that new kid on the block, once again, let's zoom out and let's go back to perspective, right? So we saw that timeline history of all the events that we had in terms of artificial intelligence, and how we as humans have been pushing the bar as what we can do with this technology, right? So how do we communicate with each other? And that's the natural language processing techniques that started many years ago. How do we see the sensors? How do we process that information? How do we walk through a field knowing that there is an object in front? How do we process that information? How do we think? So we see different pieces of this puzzle. The big umbrella being artificial intelligence, but that you have a different technique within machine learning. You may have different use cases because it can be supervised, unsupervised, and then you grow into all of these techniques. You have neural networks where we are trying to really represent the way that we think and how our brain is making all of these decisions. And the way that we communicate has been one of the hardest fields in terms of artificial intelligence, because it's one of the unique things that we bring to the table as humans. Again, the common sense is a completely unique layer that we bring as humans, but natural language processing is more like, how do we represent the way that we talk to each other with this machine, with this language? How do we represent this in an algorithm, and what it means for us to communicate with the machine in a way that feels very organic and very easy to do so. And as we evolve, again, the different techniques are correlating with what we do as humans. How do we see? How do we process that information? How do we define that is a plastic bottle swimming in the ocean versus a piece of something else, right? So all of these techniques have been part of that history and have been evolving as we continue to digitalize our processes. And that's part of what is going on here, is like, we continue to digitalize what we do in terms of the business and the enterprise. And that, of course, is generating more data coming from all over the place, right? And all kinds. So structured, unstructured, semi-structured, yada. At the end, it's like, all of this is part of this umbrella, and we are trying to maximize the opportunity here. And there is a lot of opportunity here. So what I'm showing right here, right now, is this study from McKinsey at the end of last year, where they actually were calling a $4.4 trillion in potential value for generative AI use cases. Like, think about that number. It's a very serious number. So the graph on the left and the darker bars are actually representing the previous technique, classic advanced analytics, traditional machine learning and deep learning technique, and value represented for the potential that this brings in terms of the use cases. And then you have the lighter blue actually representing the new potential of uncover use cases that are happening right now across the industries. And I will say, I am in the field. I see this every single day, and I see the potential that it brings to the table. Once again, being very conscient about the negative outcomes, because garbage in, garbage out. And these generative AI and LLM models are what? Models that have been trained with data, and data itself can be biased and can be skewed because we are pretty much digitalizing our processes and our businesses, but by default, we are also digitalizing our culture and our stereotypes and everything that comes with humanity. So we are digitalizing lack of information or lack of diversity of we have bias embedded into these data sources. So it's a huge potential that we will need to leverage, but it's also a huge aha moment. Like, be aware, this is a process that may have a very, very positive outcome, like cleaning the ocean, but also may have very, very negative outcomes where you have a very narrow perspective about something and you are not really considering all the variables as part of that model that was trained, right? So a lot of potential here, but also it's like, be aware, there is potential negative outcomes here. Now, on the right, what we are seeing is the way that I see more and more of these customers and, again, use cases in the field making the most out of this technology. And when I say this technology is, for example, generative AI that I just highlighted, the fact that it's just another piece as part of this bigger umbrella. So as a piece, as part of this bigger umbrella, we need to think about it holistically. And it's not just, okay, let's empower this one person to go crazy with an LLM, but let's think about it from a framework that is a scalable aspect of it, and ensuring that we are still the humans in the loop that are going to keep in mind PII detection, security and permissions, that I'm going to raise a flag to somebody if I see one of my teams actually asking not good questions to this LLM, like give me the social security number of this person, or give me the history of this person, like when you start crossing those limits, right? So how do we, as the humans that are empowered by this technology, are going to ensure that we are within those guardrails that is going to allow us to keep scaling, to think bigger, to be empowered by this phenomenal technology that is really bringing the value to the table, that has a phenomenal potential, but in the best possible way to really maximize what we can do with the technology as this group of humans that we are. So once again, I had a lot of fun creating these images using generative AI. I'm using a software called Midjourney. I don't know if you have tried it, but I'm really having fun with it. I think it's amazing. And this is just the beginning of it. There is so much out there that is kind of wow right now, that this is getting very powerful very quickly. And I will say, with great power, it comes great responsibility. And this is the time for us as humans where we are going to maximize what we can do with this technology, being empowered by it. But at the same time, let's think about it as humans holistically. I don't know if you guys have seen Code Bias in Netflix, great documentary. And if you haven't, I recommend it because it's a good moment to think about the potential negative outcomes that we have here as well, right? So a lot of different use cases across industry. And I will say a lot of the use cases are not even listed here because simply we don't know what we don't know. And what I have seen in the field is new emerging use cases that were completely unexpected, or seeing personas that are now empowered by this technology that were not even close to being able to do something like this 3 years ago. For example, human resources teams right now, right? That I call the non-usual suspects in terms of the developer capabilities or skills that they have as part of those teams that usually are kind of segmented by the role that they have. And now they are completely empowered with these human resources bots, for example, that are using retrieval augmented generation techniques to process all that unstructured data that comes from their own internal policies and their own resumes and their own skill matrices and all of that, that is allowing them to have conversations with bots that are now accelerating that time to value. So it's tremendous, the opportunity that this brings to the table. But as great power, it comes great responsibility. I think this is an important moment to highlight that we have different pillars to keep in mind. And when I say different pillars to keep in mind is that we are the humans that are empowered by this technology, but we have to think about it holistically to be able to be part of that framework and really optimize the opportunity. And for that, we need to consider at least 4 of these components, right? The number one is that you are going to have more people and more people and more people being part of these teams. And when I say we need to have the opportunity to be equally empowered, regardless of that skill level, because they are already empowered outside the enterprise. I mean, my kid was doing a homework with ChatGPT the other day. That's a completely different topic because we had to have a conversation, but it's happening, right? This is happening. So the fact that it's happening is like, okay, is going to be a demand for it. So you have a workforce that is coming that has that access to that technology outside the enterprise already. So this is coming, yes or yes. And we're going to have a mix of people that we have to be very intentional regarding that mixed. When I say mixed, I am talking about diverse groups, different opinions, different backgrounds, different perspectives that are actually collaborating towards an outcome that is going to benefit a community like the Ocean Cleanout Project, right? So very diverse teams collaborating towards that end goal and being able to be part of a framework that is not limiting them based on the technology or the silo or the skill. Now we are equally empowered by that technology. Now, the next pillar is that we're going to continue to have data. I mean, this is just the beginning of it. We are collecting more and more and more data as we speak. We know this has been going on for years now, and we are digitalizing every single process that was not digital before. And we can think about all the way from 1990 something, when I had my first email. Before that, we didn't, like, we communicated in paper. Like, I still have a couple of love letters from my high school crushes, right? It was paper, it was paper. So when that happened, when the transition happened, when we digitalized the way that we communicated and continue collecting more and more data. So that's not gonna stop. So how do we holistically govern, as in have some kind of oversee of what's going on here and how we are gonna ensure that we are connecting these outcomes within a guardrail that correlates with our own internal policies, with our own internal regulations, with if somebody comes to us and asks us, hey, what kind of outcome is your AI generating? And is that aligned with these policies on the EU Act or anything else that is going to come in the near future? Because we're going to have audits. We're going to have that transparency and traceability that is easy to understand what kind of outcomes we are generating, because this is just the beginning of it. This is going to continue. The demand for it is going to continue. The use cases are going to continue, and the data is never going to stop. Like, this is just the beginning of it. And then we're going to continue to see that technological change from the hardware aspect of it, which is where everything is happening. Where do we have the compute? Where are we processing this? Where are we saving this data? How that is going to change tomorrow? How that has been changing in the last decade? So back to our hypothetical exercise of the USB memory stick and the exponential plot. Just keep in mind that and think about the amount of changes that you had in the last decade or so in terms of that infrastructure, right? So that tech stack is going to continue to change. That amount of people and data is going to continue to change. It's going to be more diverse. You're going to have a lot of SMEs that bring different domain expertise into the table. Therefore, you need to connect all of that with some kind of guardrails and internal policies that is going to allow you to really maximize what you can do, but at the same time, being the human that we are, keeping that human in the loop, giving feedback to these systems as in positive, negative, working, not working as part of it. Otherwise, we're going to keep adding those frictions and bottlenecks to this framework that is not going to allow us to really maximize the opportunity here. So when we think about these 4 pillars and we think about the why it's important to have this framework and why do we need to be able to tech communicate and to collaborate and to talk to each other and to empower our SMEs with that domain expertise, but regardless of the skill sets, the programming and the non-programming and yada, 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 there is a humongous opportunity there. I see it in the field. I see what's going on with different users, really being able to interrogate this data, being able to apply machine learning techniques, AI techniques to their own enterprise data and use cases and their own daily base. Hey, this is my OKR. I'm going to think about AI agent that is going to help me be more successful as the human that I am, but as the empowered human that I am, that is really maximizing the opportunity with this technology. And then it becomes a huge potential here that I am actually seeing in the field. It's phenomenal. I mean, the things that are happening out there are very, very outstanding. So I've been on a monologue for a few minutes now, but I'm going to highlight a couple of things that I really wish that you can take with you home, besides the fact that you were sharing some time on a Friday afternoon with this Colombian. So you're going to say things like, okay, number 1, be the human. And when I say be the human, is these technologies out there, this is happening. There are very, very positive things that can come out of a framework where we can communicate to each other, tech communicate, and being able to work towards that goal. But at the same time, keep in mind that we are a diverse group of people and that we need to work together in a way that we have been unable to previously because of these siloed pockets on technology and skills. Number 2 is responsibility. Again, with great power, it comes great responsibility. And now more than ever, we have to define these proper frameworks that is going to allow us to align the AI and the data outcomes that we are generating with the organization's values and the actual policies and the internal rules and regulations, so we can actually be proactively checking for bias and we can be mitigating these issues, right? So how are we going to ensure that we have fairness and transparency and explainability and accountability? I mean, we're going to be generating data outcomes and again, garbage in, garbage out, and we may have a lot of garbage that has been included in the training on all of these models, including LLMs and so on, no? So data is more than numbers. And I think historically, we have seen very positive outcomes, but also very negative outcomes. And I will say that is shaping our history as humans. And at the same time, we need to be very aware that all the data that goes into these systems has to be as accurate as possible, and that is continuously changing, no? So keeping in mind that drift can happen and that you may need to retrain a model, and that it's not that you are generating one model that is going to be deployed forever without any changes. We need to be very aware of what is it that we are doing and how it can be a negative outcome and who is going to be accountable for it, hold accountable for it. Now, data is going to continue to come, as I mentioned. So this is just the beginning. And right now, the new boom is using the new kid on the block, which is generative AI. Therefore, unstructured data is kind of the main player right now in the field. But classic machine learning and AI is super strong and continues to prove a lot of value in the field. So I think remember, is one piece of the holistic aspect of it, is one piece of the complete puzzle. And as the piece is, it needs to be equally scalable, part of the framework, equally treated as we need a framework, and we need to be able to keep that human in the loop, right? So having the full picture regarding the data, I mentioned many times, we are empowering these humans, enjoy the technology, is there, but at the same time, be very aware that you are not thinking only in your box, that usually when you are covering a business use case or targeting a business use case, you do have a domain expert, and that domain expertise has to be part of these flows, has to be part of these systems. That outcome has to be validated, right? So always, always, always keep that SME in the loop as part of the data science pipeline or everything that you are creating with this as a data outcome. Now, the responsibility is think about what is so positive about it, but also think about the consequences, right? So how are you going to incorporate this responsible AI and transparent AI framework as part of that digital transformation strategy? And that has to be part of it. But I will say at the same time, once we are part of that framework, let's maximize the opportunity, because collectively, we are more intelligent and we are bringing our domain, our expertise as part of that framework. And that actually helps to maximize the opportunity. Now, small wins go a long way, and pick one thing to start and prove the value and understand the dynamics of the framework, and then scale. Think bigger, because right now we do have the pieces for this to be as successful as it can be at biggest scale, right? Let's think bigger. Now, people are the best assets we have in our organizations. We are the humans that are empowered by this technology. We are the ones who are defining the guardrails for these frameworks to be successful and scalable. But we are the ones that are together collaborating, planning these data projects together, drafting the data collection practices together, ensuring that we have the proper transparency and anti-bias and fairness in place as part of these strategies that we together are targeting for us to make this successful. Right? So I'm going to allow a few minutes for us if we want to have a little bit of feedback or bi-directional communication. So it's not only my monologue here, but I appreciate you listening to me today in this Friday afternoon. I know it's a beautiful weather outside, so I hope after this you can go out and enjoy it. And let me know if you have any questions or comments or anything else during these 10 minutes that we have left.
Thank you, Catalina. That's you can tell you're very passionate about this.
You can tell that from yes, a bit, yeah, a bit. I have seen it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and again with my both brains, right? The teacher, the professor side of it, the academia side of it, but also the enterprise side of it. So I have perspective that comes from very different worlds that complement my own perspective. So yes, passion is no doubt part of me.
Yes, well, thank you. I have a couple questions, but if anybody else has a question, feel free to jump in. I was wondering, you put up a slide at one point with all the different business functions. And one of the things that I've seen with some of the businesses I've talked to is really We've talked about it in terms of the digital transformation and digital twinning and just how
Mhm,
expensive that is.
mhm,
Like we have tons of data, but we don't necessarily have tons of data from the right places, if that makes sense, or the right types of data. Do you have any case studies or anything you can talk to about, um, you know, going in and getting the right kind of data, specifically for these small and medium-sized businesses that I work with that are,
mhm,
I they don't have the resources to go launch an ocean cleaning type of a thing, they just can't do that, but they
mhm.
would love to have, and they need to have start collecting that data that that is just in their day-to-day things that they go out. If they're out in a vehicle, they need to collect certain things. If they need to start bringing that and making it part of their culture. I was just wondering if you have any tips and any use cases there that you could explain or share.
I think you mentioned one key word there, and it's part of the culture. So yes, we have multiple use cases out there where, first of all, the twinning of this thing and digital twin and all of that, it has a lot of noise on it. Realistically, it's like, okay, digitally, tell me what is it that we do, right?
Yeah.
So what's our process? How we connect the dots in a digital way, and how we are representing that through a data outcome. So first of all, the data quality and stage one is still very complex out there in terms of the garbage and the amount of ETL and process that needs to happen for you to really being able to answer a simple question out of your data. So I think that there is more and more and more technology that helps you ensure that the data that you are feeding as part of that digital twin is as clean as it can be. And for that, think about it as basic rules that you set in place and say, hey, this distribution has to be between this number and this number. If this distribution is above that number, is something wrong and we need to check it out. I have to have X amount of columns. If I have one less, something is wrong, check it out. I have to have X amount of, so there is a lot of rules that you can put in place to ensure that whatever is going on into your digital twin is as clean as it can be. True story. But at the same time, I have seen from the cultural aspect that you mentioned as well, the cultural shift is something that needs to happen, right? Not everybody understands the importance of having clean data and the garbage in, garbage out concept. So I see a lot of these digital twins projects starting with the basic, hey, by the way, this is the dashboard with the data as dirty as it is. Our first project is to define how we're going to clean it, because it starts with visualizing how horrible it is to start with. And that itself helps on that cultural shift. It's like, this is garbage. This was my fault. We didn't have any naming conventions. Everybody is using uppercase, lowercase, little line in between, no little line in between. Nobody knows anything. We need to start standardizing the way that we are collecting this. We need to start normalizing what kind of columns do we have and how we're going to consume it, because it's going to be part of our digital twin. And the more we clean and target that quality of the data, the best representation we can have from our own processes. And that's when you have an optimal digital twin. But you're going to have to grow into it. And part of that is that cultural shift that doesn't happen if you don't see how horrible it is. So stage one is not only have the basic rules that you have into the cleaning aspect of it, but also feed that back to your team. Feed that back to your people that is actually populating this data, and create that consciousness of, oh, this is actually helping us or not helping us, or we are getting better and better and better. So track the changes and the quality improvement, because that also fits the culture. Oh, we are getting better. A year ago, this was a disaster. Now we can actually see the categories and they're clean, right? So it's part of that cultural shift that goes with it.
Anybody want to jump in with a question of their own? If not, I'll just keep asking questions. Okay. Um, Digital twinning, and this is where this is a challenge that I'm experiencing in my own business, and I see it with so many others. How do you determine where to start? And I'm not talking like like accounting as often has digital data there. You can almost do a digital, say that's the digital twin for finance. But I'm talking
Mhm.
about operations. How do you know what data to start with and how? Yeah, I guess I'll
That's a
start
great
with that.
question. Yeah, and my advice is always reverse engineer. My question is, let's target what is the KPI that we are trying to move positively? Which is the needle that we are going to try to move? And usually it's a reverse engineer because a lot of these digital twins, I mean, you can get easily in a rabbit hole if you don't know exactly what is it that you are trying to accomplish. That's why the first thing that we do is start with the business use case. Well, what that means is that you are going to have a you need to show that you are showing value, you are generating value. How are you going to prove that you are generating value? So it's usually you're going to fit that into a KPI that can be, oh, this is going to generate cost savings. Let's say this we were hiring a third party to provide with these insights from this data, and now we are able to do it, and these were the questions that the third party was helping us to answer. Stage one. You can have operational efficiencies, for example, when you are thinking, oh, this was taking 6 hours to this accounter to put together because this person had to collect silos of data from A, B, C, D, E to answer that business question. And now that's a little micro automation job, for example, but you do have a business, identify the needle that you want to move so you can prove that you are moving the needle. Okay, so it's like a reverse engineer exercise. So where do you start? Well, let's go back to the needle that we're going to move. This is the KPI that we are targeting. These are the variables that are part of this KPI. These are the 5, 6, 7, 8 silos that are part of those variables. And that's where you go back to the silos and the data and the quality and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, that makes sense?
That makes sense. Is there a strategy in selecting that? Because I imagine not all data is the same, right? So if I have to implement a bunch of telemetry in order to get to that KPI, that might be a
Mhm.
big capital expense that we're not in a position to do. So
Yes.
maybe I start with something a little simpler. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
How do you
that's
think about it?
exactly it. That's exactly it. And start with something that you can prove value on. You need to arm yourself with the number as in, yeah, I am moving this needle. Now I need more people. Now I'm moving this needle. Now I need to invest on more technology because I can move these other 5 needles. And I'm moving this needle. I understood what happened for me to move this needle. And I am moving not only this needle, but this one and this one and this one because now I have a framework. And now I can scale and now I can do more. And that's where you start actually smoothing out those processes. But you're right. Sometimes it's overwhelming because we are swimming in data. Data is all over the place. So the question one is, which needle are we going to move, and which needle from all of these needles is the easiest to move, where we already have the data to move it and prove the value there. But yeah,
Excellent.
you are
Yeah.
thinking in the right way. Has anybody tried Midjourney on any of the image generation, DALI or any of the? So yeah,
I've used Stable Diffusion a bit.
okay. How you like it? This is quite interesting. Any crazy stuff that happened so far?
You know, fingers where they shouldn't be, or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
extra
The
eyeballs.
fingers are hard. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. The fingers are hard. I've been trying, so I've been communicating with Midjourney and I provided a bunch of pictures of me and I was trying to generate my own avatar, Midjourney avatar, and I did about 30 back and forward interactions because none of the initial ones were even close. But you communicate with the model, and now you can do it in a natural language way, which is like, wow, it's an aha moment. We are living a very cool moment chapter in history. So we are the lucky and power humans. We need to know that, so own that. This is a good chapter for us in humanity.
Definitely.
It's funny, our grandchildren won't know anything else, but this. They'll
That's true.
operate it like breathing.
Yeah, they'll look at you. You actually had to talk to your AI?
Yeah, I
Wow.
know. And how they're gonna know what's real and what's not anymore.
Yeah.
Like, whoa,
Well, we
yeah,
already don't need no. Look at all this social media, politics. You like anywhere you go, The garbage in is already happening.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I know. Again, if you haven't seen Code Bias in Netflix, I will totally recommend it. It's a aha moment as in it's a little shocking, but it's also good to know. Like we are living this chapter and great power, great responsibility. What's my side? What are our 2 cents towards this, right?
Did you say code bias? Is it the name of it?
Code Bias,
Coded
yeah.
bias.
Yeah,
Guy,
I
put
code.
put
the
it.
link in
Let me
the
put it in the.
chat.
There's
Yeah,
a
I
link
put
in
the
the
link
chat.
in the
Yeah.
chat.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, our time is up, and I think I could sit here and pick your brain, Catalina, for a couple more hours, but we gotta go do other things. But thank you so much. I think you posted, I saw a link somewhere to your LinkedIn. So we'll reach out to you
It's
and connect.
Yeah. Do
it's
that.
it's in the Trello as well if you guys forget where it is
Oh,
or something. Yeah.
that's where it is. Okay. That's where I saw it. Let me copy and paste that in the chat if that's okay. And Catalina, I'm gonna, if it's all right with you, I'll process this and share it with the group. So those, there's about 35 that aren't here, and then our greater AIM Utah membership will be able to watch it after the fact too. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am here. Like, if you wanna have another question because I triggered something, just DM me on LinkedIn and we can talk about it.
Sounds good. Perfect. Thank you so much.
I
Absolutely.
also would like to thank Carrie for connecting us with Catalina. That was very nice of you, and thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure. She's
Thank you.
amazing. She truly is phenomenal and just so inspiring. And I learn something new every time I listen to her. So yes. So
That was
thank
the
you for
goal.
the opportunity.
Yes, thanks for having us, MC.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
All
much.
right. Enjoy your
Thank you,
Friday.
guys.
Yes,
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful
Thank you.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.